The first half of the Denver Broncos season is over, and the emergence of Bo Nix as the team's franchise quarterback is the biggest surprise of the first half. We'll tell you why and highlight our own particular ones here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's happening, Broncos Country? Welcome into another episode, Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you know it is your team every day. Thank you so much to everyone at Broncos Country, all the everydayers, all the first listeners for making the show exactly what it is. We appreciate you so much. The bye week blues are here, but you know what? It's almost over. We're almost getting ready to approach another game week here on Locked On Broncos. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports. You can check out my written work, milehighsports.com. You can check out Sayre Bedinger. He's the site expert over there, predominantly orange.com, and also a writer over there at NFL Spin Zone. You can check out all his work over there. Here's what we can break down here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. We'll wrap things up by talking about the best moments from the first half of the season here for this Broncos team. We'll highlight some of the biggest disappointments in terms of developments and even players in the second portion of today's show, but we're going to kick things off by highlighting the biggest surprise for the Broncos in the first half of the season. A lot to break down here on today's episode of the show, which is brought to you by our friends over there at FanDuel. And you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. And new customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Sayre, I mean, look, 13 weeks of just nonstop football play. I think sometimes like the duration of a season, if it gets longer and you have your bye week, it seems more favorable, especially if you're healthy as is. And the Broncos happen to, I don't want to say luck into it, but go into week 13, afterwards, going to the bye week, relatively healthy, and they're in a playoff conversation. I mean, this right here, the timeline couldn't have worked out better.
It's really exciting, Cody, for the team to be in the position that it's in. Obviously, it makes our jobs a lot more fun every single week when we get to talk about the Broncos. As I was talking with my wife on the phone earlier today, I was like, in this profession, I've not covered the Broncos as a playoff team. And so how cool would that be for us to be able to do that together this year and for the listeners to be along for that ride as we're kind of doing it for the first time, right? Obviously, the Broncos we got used to them making the playoffs and being Super Bowl contenders in our upbringing. But as doing this professionally, it's kind of crazy to think about. But the biggest story from this year has obviously been the reason why this team is in contention, why it is a potential playoff team, is that emergence of Bo Nix, right? And I think that we talk about it in the lead up to the season. You obviously have hopes and things like that, and you want to be able to see the quarterback draft pick work out, and you don't want to have to be on the quarterback carousel anymore. But like, Bo Nix has set this team up. It's so much different than years prior where you felt like, okay, the defense is keeping the team in position to win enough games and your quarterback just has to make enough plays. It really feels like the defense is playing well, obviously, but Bo Nix is really a big reason why the Broncos are winning these games.
Yeah, I think when we look at it from like Broncos Country, standpoint of there, like in terms of developments of this first half of the season, the defense has been playing really well. And obviously, as we're putting the show together, we're debating like, all right, what has been the biggest surprise? Has it been the Broncos' defensive dominance, or is it, hey, the Broncos, they have their franchise quarterback? All signs seem to point to that. I mean, it's hard to kind of go away with the hot hand here. And it really is. Like, Bo Nix is the talking point right now in Broncos Country. I mean, Micah Parsons, let's talk about the Broncos defense, which is cool and all. But, the highlight and the focus is, hey, like Sean Payton's got his guy at quarterback. So I'd say like, through the first 13 weeks, that has been the biggest surprise development so far of this season. Considering like weeks 1 and weeks 2, it was rough for Bo. We were like, all right, hey, not a great start, but, you need some more help around him, especially when we talked about the offense. And, we talked about Bo's trying to figure out how to get comfortable in the system. He's trying to figure out what he can and can't do. And I think that learning curve, it kind of flipped quickly, right? Because look, after that Pittsburgh Steelers game in week 2, we're like, oh man, they're 0-2. Now they're about to be on this tough stretch where now they got to go play Baker Mayfield and Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were a playoff team a year ago, fully healthy. They have one of the most explosive offenses at that point, building up to week 3. And then you got to go play the New York Jets in week 4. Like, okay, everyone's talking about the Jets, this and that. But Bo coming out in that week 3 game against Tampa Bay, I'd say was probably the most impressive thing, right? Because They came out slinging the football, which wasn't something that they had success with in the first couple of weeks. And just to see Bo grow and mature from that point all the way to now. Sayre, we've said it a multitude of times in the last handful of weeks. Bo Nix looks like an entirely different quarterback right now than he did early on in the year. And I would almost hazard a guess to say, like, if the Broncos had this type of Bo in week 1 and week 2, I think they beat Pittsburgh. I think they beat Seattle. And all of a sudden now everything on this season might be a little bit different. But you know what? He was a rookie. He figured out he's growing quickly. So for me, I think that's definitely the storyline here for this team. I mean, how do you feel about that? And then obviously we can get into some players who are like the biggest surprise players in our eyes here in the first half of the season.
Well, yeah, I feel like that's been so huge. And incidentally, Cody, how interesting is it that that may come into play here in terms of, well, the Bo Nix that we see now could have beat Pittsburgh early in the season. Maybe he'll get a chance to beat Pittsburgh in the playoffs. Maybe we'll get an opportunity to see a little bit of a rematch there, and actually Russell Wilson versus the Denver Broncos this year with the stakes as high as they could possibly be. I mean, that would be, can you imagine the storylines, Cody, if that was the first playoff game that you and I covered together? I mean, let's just dream for a little bit, Broncos country here. It'd be exciting. But I think in terms of the biggest surprise player, you have to look at just this roster as a whole being a surprise. Of course, the worst ranked roster in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus and pretty much every other site that does these metrics, 33rd team, ESPN, they're all ranking the Broncos roster as being terrible. So who's a surprise among the surprises, right? I picked Devon Vele as my guy just because 26-year-old rookie, not even the most diehard NFL draft fans knew or cared about this guy going into the process, right, Cody? Because when you're making mock draft predictions, if you find out that a guy's 26 years old, he's probably coming off your board, as the armchair general manager. Like, oh, that guy's too old to really carve out much of a career for himself in the NFL. I don't know. I feel like this guy has proven himself as maybe the number 2 option in the offense at this point at receiver, and maybe not even there's a maybe qualifier there, right? He's been a playmaker, especially the last month plus. Devon Vele, to me, Cody, is the biggest surprise player on this team. Strong hands, great catch radius, very instinctive, and I think he's only going to continue to get better as the season goes along.
Well, and this even goes back to some excitement during training camp, right? He had the one-handed catch that went a little viral on social media, and it was like, oh, wow, like Devon Vele. It's like we started seeing Devon Vele really stack days, and it was to the point where the Broncos saw enough out of that to say, hey, you know what? We can move on from Tim Patrick, and I know that's been a pain point, and it was great to see him catch 2 touchdowns on Thursday Night Football. So dang happy for Tim Patrick. That guy deserves it. And he deserves to be in that situation where he could potentially win a Super Bowl this year. Very, very happy for Tim. But yeah, I agree. I think Devon Vele's been such a surprise emergence. And obviously a little bit early, it was after the week 1 game, he did suffer that rib injury, which was a little unfortunate. He missed some time, but I mean, he has truly become the number 2 receiver here inside of this offense. And now these young guys are finding their rhythm. They're finding what their role is going to be. And look, I think Devon Vele is going to be a guy that not only is going to be a short to intermediate guy, but I think he can emerge as a downfield threat, not necessarily with speed, but I'm talking about possession, 50-50 looks. I think that's going to come. That's going to be a part of his game we're going to see here very soon. I'm going to go with the defensive player here in terms of my biggest surprise player in the first half of the season. It's going to be Brandon Jones. And look, Sayre, you and I think we're on the same level of thinking throughout training camp because, I was there and we're like, hey, Brandon Jones is not practicing. Like he suffered that hamstring injury and all of a sudden he just hasn't been able to do anything. And he's just out there. And Vance Joseph made comments literally right before the last preseason game that it's concerning he hasn't gotten any reps. And then we're thinking, wow, the Broncos, they moved on from Justin Simmons. They signed this guy. We don't know what he's going to bring just yet. And then regular season comes around and it's like, all right, hey, dude didn't play any preseason games, didn't participate much in training camp, but man, he has brought it. He has been a fun player. I think he's been a very crucial piece on the back end of the secondary for the Broncos. And obviously they missed him a little bit in the second half there against the Cleveland Browns on Monday Night Football. Not only is he a guy that can cover well in zone and he can cover well in man-to-man coverage. I mean, heck, he even jammed David Njoku off the line on a second touchdown. Like, great coverage, better throw. And it's unfortunate, you got to live with that sometimes. But he has also proven he can play man coverage. Brandon Jones has been a fun player to watch. He is my surprise player for the Broncos in the first half of the season.
Yeah, I love that pick too, especially because the stakes were very high for him, right? Coming into this season with Justin Simmons being released, everybody being skeptical, the injuries in the offseason, preventing him from really even seeing the field until the first week of the season, which was tough for us as fans, being like, man, the safety position is probably our biggest area of concern with Justin being gone. And you've brought in this guy who wasn't even a full-time starter at Miami, made some plays, did some good things, but wasn't even a full-time starter there, and just a part-time guy, and somebody that, a risk that you took. And there was a lot of talk about, did you overpay him in free agency to bring him in? Like, I love that pick as a surprise player for this defense, because I don't think the Broncos have one of the top 5 defenses in the NFL this season without Brandon Jones's production. Certainly made a game-changing interception against the Raiders on the road a couple of weeks ago, something that affected the impact and flow of that game. So he's been a game changer for Denver's defense. And I think you could say that about a number of guys, right? I think you could say like Cody Barton's been a surprise for a lot of people. Riley Moss has been a surprise. And so there's a lot of guys on this defense that they've really stepped up. And even, let's say, Nick Bonito, Cody, how many people expected him to be in the spot that he's in? I mean, just a big time development season from this Denver Broncos defense. So hats off to the coaching staff and for getting these guys prepared.
And Broncos Country, as you're watching and listening along here today, we want to hear from you who your biggest surprise players were in the first half of the season and the biggest surprise development of the first half of Denver's season as they gear up for 4 games, a playoff push on the way here for the Broncos. One thing we're going to highlight as well, we talk about surprises, but now we got to analyze disappointments. The Broncos run game has been frustrating to watch. We'll highlight why that is one of the biggest disappointment parts of the first half of the season here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Broncos Country, today's episode of the show is brought to you by our friends over there at Omaha Steaks, and the holiday season is here. Omaha Steaks might be a great gift that you can give to the loved ones in your life, and nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. It's guaranteed perfection in every single bite, and right now, you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, score an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages featuring gourmet favorites. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. Minimum purchase may apply. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over there at Skylight Frames. And if you're trying to find a gift for a group of people in your life, family, friends, if you come from a big family, it can be hard and expensive to buy each one a personal gift for the holidays. If you're planning to celebrate the holidays with your friend group and want to surprise them all with something a bit more special and meaningful than booze this year, well, guess what? We've got the perfect gift for you. Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame that your whole family and your friends will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. It's so easy to use. Setup takes less than 60 seconds. On top of that, it looks beautiful inside of your home. Photos are displayed in HD resolution, and you can choose from 5 different frame styles. Set it up in portrait or landscape mode, and it's better than social media. It's a great private way to share photos without posting it to the world or having to print and store hard copies. And now is a special limited time offer for our listeners. Get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NFL. That's skylightframe.com/NFL. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NFL.
Broncos Country, we kept it positive before talking about some of the biggest surprises in a good way this season, but what about players that have been disappointments for the Denver Broncos in 2024? Well, Cody and I, we're going to have to kind of break the bad news here on today's episode of Locked On Broncos, but don't worry, we've got some more positivity coming your way also in this episode. But Broncos Country, thanks so much for rocking with us this year on Locked On Broncos and every single day for all you everydayers out there. If you haven't already done so, hit subscribe subscribe right now wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as over there on YouTube, as we continue to discuss Broncos disappointments here in the bye week. Cody, it's a great time to reflect. It's a great time to kind of look back at the season that has been. Obviously, the Broncos largely haven't been disappointing at all. And of course, we know that that's because a lot of times you make personnel changes in the season. You have sort of things that just the ebbs and flows of everything. We figure things out. The coaching staff starts to realize, hey, we can't be rocking with this guy anymore. We have to make a change at this spot. That happened for the Broncos last year too. Remember, after that Miami game, all those personnel changes that led to just a ton of success for the team defensively, specifically. But I want to throw this to you. Like, as far as disappointments go, let's talk about just the team as a whole, right? The biggest disappointing storyline for this Denver Broncos team, I think it's unfortunately maybe something that even dates back to last season as well.
Yeah, and look, I think Broncos Country is probably going to be synonymous with us in terms of our agreement on this. It's the run game on the offensive side of the ball. The rushing attack has not been good. And look, I think that's just the pain point. Like you mentioned it even last season. We brought it up in the postgame show after Monday Night Football. The last Broncos running back to run for 100 yards was Latavius Murray when Jerry Rosberg was the interim head coach. The Broncos have gone 30 straight games, Sayre, without having a 100-yard rusher. Now, I'd say as a team, they've hit over 100 yards rushing collectively, spread out amongst a couple of guys, whether it be Bo Nix, Jaleel McLaughlin, Javonte Williams in totality, combining those numbers, or Tyler Bidet and Bo Nix and there hasn't been one steady producer on the offensive side of the ball in the run game. And I think that has probably been a little bit of the frustrating part, because it means that there's a lack of consistency. And we maybe expect some changes to happen here after the bye week. But you and I have done so many shows this season, and Broncos Country, the everydayers and first listeners, they can attest to this. We have said, if the run game gets going, this offense is going to get to another level. So far, we have not seen the run game get going in totality with one guy. Now, in some games where the run game has been present, I think probably the New Orleans game is the best example of the run game overall this year. Some of it's by Bo Nix, escaping pressure and then using his legs. Some's by design. Some of it's with, the running backs breaking off a couple of runs there. But it's like from that point forward, it opens everything up. And it also helps your defense, because now you're grinding time off the clock. And now if you're converting drives into points, a problem the Broncos have had, in previous years, not so much this year, which has been nice to see considering their point totalage as of late. That to me has been disappointing, because Denver here, they're at 8-5. Hard to imagine that they wouldn't have 10 wins right now if the run game wasn't better in a few of those games early on in the season.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, they should have at least 9 wins, shouldn't they, with the field goals? And one of the games where they did run the ball quite well. But to your point, Cody, the red zone offense, which after the first 2 weeks of the season was dead last in the NFL. I know that's a small sample, but after 2 weeks, you were dead last in the NFL in red zone percentage. The Broncos are 11th in the NFL offensively in red zone offense, with a rookie quarterback and with a running game that has struggled more than most on third and short situations, second and short situations. I mean, I know that's been brought up by those who are statistically inclined. Like when you look at situational running, the Broncos have not been great in that regard. And so I would completely agree with you. I know we've had some fun discussions about this throughout the season in terms of, hey, the Broncos run game's really helping out their young quarterback. I don't know about that. Maybe when he's running the ball well, it's helping out the quarterback, because he's doing the running himself. So kind of interesting, that narrative. But I do hope as we get to the end of the season, starting with the Indianapolis game, like Broncos got to run the ball better. And we got a good start from Jaleel McLaughlin on Monday night against Cleveland Browns. As far as disappointing players, Cody, I'm gonna stick with that same theme. I think Javonte Williams, to me, has been one of the more disappointing players on this team. Here's a stat that I don't even like to say. 23 of the last 29 games that he's played, which is the last 2 seasons, 2023 and 2024, 23 of those 29 games, Javonte has averaged less than 4 yards per carry on average. Now, that there's different context with each of those games, right? Obviously, there might be some games in which, hey, he was averaging 4.5 yards a carry, and then they had to wind down the clock at the end of the game. It brought his average down here. I think the eye test will tell us that stat, unfortunately, just makes a lot of sense, right? Javante's getting hit at or behind the line of scrimmage far too often, especially for a guy whose game is predicated on breaking tackles, creating yardage after contact, and making plays in space. And even if you want to go down that rabbit trail, he's not making guys miss in space. He's not breaking tackles when he gets one-on-one opportunities. He's been dropping passes. He's had a couple of really untimely fumbles. I hate to be this guy because I know Javonte is I'm sure he's a great guy. He's working hard. He doesn't want this to happen. Nobody's more frustrated than him, but 23 of the last 29 games, he has averaged less than 4 yards a carry. That's definitely disappointing from your former second-round pick.
Yeah, and look, it's tough because you look at, like, he lost weight in the offseason. He looked more athletic. He looked kind of bouncy like he did at UNC early on, like in training camp. And it's like, all right, hey, like Javonte, this is going to be a turnaround year for him. And just like simple things like the Broncos on a 3rd and 1, Sayre. I know we saw the clip on social media. We watched the game from Monday Night Football. Denver had a 3rd and 1, and they did a handoff right up the middle, and it didn't go anywhere. You lost 2 yards. And it's like, Denver can't even pick up 1 yard in the run game in crucial 3rd down situations. And that to me is a little frustrating. And it's like, you need to be able to run the ball and do that, because then it's like, we've seen Denver become a little more pass happy on 3rd down, because even 3rd and short, like there was a 3rd and 1 that the Broncos had in the 4th quarter, and Bo Nix threw like I think a 16, 17 yard out route to Cortland Sutton. It's like, oh wow, it's like 3rd and 1. It's like, but that just goes to show they don't have confidence in their ability to run the ball effectively. I agree. I think offensively, Javante's performance this season has definitely been frustrating, and kind of just goes in with the run game. I don't know what the problem is. I don't know why they can't find a way to run the ball consistently. And unfortunately for Javonte, it's just, like I said, what is it, 3.6, 3.5 yards per carry averaging, this season right now. It's not ideal, and it's a little problematic for Denver's offense. We'll see if they make some changes to the run game here coming out of the bye. I agree with you there. The player I'd say that was probably the most disappointing to me, in my opinion, not even on the roster anymore, it's Greg Dulcich. And, going into last season, we were so excited to say, like, all right, hey, Sean Payton has talked about Greg Dulcich being your joker. And then this year it was more like, all right, hey, the biggest key for Greg Dulcich, can he stay healthy in training camp? Okay, he's done that. And he stacked some really good performances during camp. But even like when he was on the field in the regular season, it didn't have the same luxury that we've seen from Dulcich in the past. He's not able to block effectively to help set things up in the run game. And also he was more of a decoy in a sense, in terms of just running routes for the offensive side of the ball. He never really emerged as the guy that you wanted. And I think for the Broncos to say, like, it's just not working, and for them to cut ties. Now he's with the New York Giants, and I hope he has a great career there, or I hope he has a great career wherever he ends up after the season. It's just frustrating to see, because it's like, hey, this is a guy who had all the potential traits marked as like, hey, this guy could be a very potent player here for the Broncos offense. And it's never formulated. I would say that's probably been the biggest disappointment from a player standpoint in the first half of the season. In Broncos Country, we want to hear from you. What was your most disappointing development of the first half of the Denver season? And also, who are the players that maybe were the most disappointing in your eyes? Make sure you let us know, however you're listening or watching. Locked On Broncos. But one thing we are going to get to as well, to wrap up our recap of the first half of the season, what were some of the best moments from weeks 1 through weeks 13? We'll share what Broncos Country told us, plus we'll share our picks here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's Locked On Broncos podcast is brought to you by our friends over there at FanDuel. And as you all know, at FanDuel, they are America's #1 sportsbook. And with week 14 of the NFL season here, they want you to get ready to tackle the action inside of the app. You got the Chargers and Chiefs on Sunday Night Football, a crucial matchup inside the AFC West that many in the NFL pegged that week 14, this is going to be the best game of the week. We'll see if that's the case. And if you believe a matchup with Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes will be must-see TV, well, guess what? It is must-bet entertainment as well inside of FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers, they can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. So they give you everything that you need inside the app. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, if you're watching along on Sunday Night Football, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play. If you see some trends developing, you can get in on the action there on the same exact page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Check it out today. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over there at IceShaker. And listen up, Locked On Broncos fans, and to all the sports fans that you know, or if you have sports fans in your life, you're like me, and when it comes to holiday shopping, sometimes I'm a little behind the bar here. I haven't even gotten started yet. But for those in my life that I know are big time sports fans, that's where IceShaker comes in handy. And I'll tell you why. It's the perfect gift for passionate sports fans in your life. Perhaps you've heard of the IceShaker. IceShaker is now officially licensed with the NFL, the NHL, NBA, NCAA, and MLB, and will make for the ideal gift this holiday season. Created by and used by the Gronkowski brothers, IceShakers have sold over 1 million bottles. They have changed the game with workout bottles, and this is the gift that you've been looking for. So go to IceShaker.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout to save 25% on your order. Some of the things that I like about it, it's kitchen grade stainless steel bottles, won't absorb odor like other plastic bottles do. It's fully customizable where you can send in your logo and you can check out their custom shop to customize your favorite bottle. And the turnaround time on custom bottles is 3 to 5 business days. So make sure you check it out here today. Order your team branded bottles at IceShaker.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for 25% off your order. IceShakers, show your support for your teams with the best branded workout bottles on the market. That is IceShakers. As we get into the fourth quarter action on today's episode, Locked On Broncos, we'll highlight some of our favorite moments from the first half of the Broncos seasons, dating back to week 1 all the way to week number 13. Real quick, I want to say thank you once again, everyone in Broncos Country, for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day every single day. Sayre, let's get into it here. I think, let's kick things off with ours, and then we'll get to what Broncos Country kind of sent in as their favorite moment of the season. For you, when you look at week 1 through week 13, looking back on the season, what was your favorite moment so far of the year?
I think that just the whooping the Broncos put on the Raiders, Cody, early this season to end their streak, at which I think dated back to like 2019 or something ridiculous like that. It's been way too long since the Broncos beat the Raiders. They've never beaten the Las Vegas Raiders until this season. And obviously we got the clean sweep, but how satisfying was it you whooped the Raiders in Denver. Bo Nix had a huge game that week. You were wearing the throwback uniforms. Like, that's one of those banner moments this season. Pat Surtain had a pick 6. Like, I look back at that game quite fondly, Cody, in terms of just the great moments from this season. There was so much within that game as well that was exciting for Broncos Country, just to see like Riley Moss got an interception in that game as well. It was just, it's great to beat a division rival. You had Max Crosby, talking some smack as per usual, and then Bo Nix kind of going out and responding by having a big game there. It was just great. So to me, that's been one of the biggest highlights of the season, is the streak ender, Sean Payton, ending streaks once again, beating the Raiders.
Well, the next streak, Kenny, hopefully end is the Broncos playoff drought. That is what Broncos Country is hoping for here in the second half of the season. I like that. That was a big moment of the season, considering where Denver was at after the 0-2 start. And then they rattle off 3 straight wins. It was very defining, I think, for that point of the season there for the Broncos. And I want to kind of go to now, like, I think for me, my favorite moment in terms of just like, hey, this was a fun experience, especially being in the press box, was Bo Nix's 4-touchdown performance against the Atlanta Falcons. I think going into that game, we're like, it's Kirk Cousins. They got Drake London, Bijan Robinson. And like, we're going to find out what this Broncos team is really made of. We didn't expect Bo Nix was going to light it up the way that he did in that game. 85% completion percentage earned him AFC Player of the Week. And I think that was a huge moment there. Also, can I add this too for November? How is it that Bo Nix won not offensive rookie, but he won Rookie of the Week for 3 straight weeks in November, but doesn't win Rookie of the Month? And Brock Bowers gets it. I don't understand that. That's a little weird if we're being honest here. So, I want to throw that out there as kind of a talking point. We talked about it on KOA with Dave Logan and Ryan Edwards the other day, and I was like, wait, I didn't think of it from that standpoint. But you know what? It is what it is. His 4-touchdown performance was a key highlight, I think, of the first half of the season, and it created a lot of content in Broncos Country where people were going and digging through the receipts of the offseason takes that people had about Bo Nix and the Broncos. That was a good one right there. If we can sit here and maybe highlight Broncos Country's favorite moment here of the season, it's a recent one, right? What do you think they voted on? We sent out a couple things, right? It was, obviously, I think the Raiders game in week 5, seeing Bo have a 3-touchdown game, and that game right there. Some people even said like him competing with Patrick Mahomes in the Kansas City Chiefs was a moment that they were like pleased with. Even though Denver didn't win, they're like, the best moment was realizing that they have a quarterback that can compete with the Chiefs. Huge. Or what do you think it was?
Dude, that's a great pick. That right there. I had people texting me during that game, Cody, being like, "Hey, the Broncos got a quarterback," and I'm like, "Don't freaking text me. They just lost to the Chiefs. Get out of here." No, I'm joking. I didn't do that. I didn't say that. I wanted to say it, but what about that 93-yard touchdown against the Cleveland Browns? I mean, might legitimately be the best throw that we've seen this season from any quarterback. I mean, that may be a hot take, Cody, because there's a lot of throws. I watch a lot of throws, though. I've seen a lot of the passes that have been thrown this year. I haven't seen many that were 45, 50 yards down the field, backed up in your own end zone, 3rd and 11, perfect ball placement. I know people like Shelby Harris out there want to say, well, Denzel Ward should have caught the ball and picked it off. Absolutely not. No, he shouldn't have. He was late getting there because it was a perfect throw, perfect placement, perfect timing. So to me, Cody, that may be the moment as we poll Broncos country and kind of figure out that's a moment right there that with the playoffs on the line, with your season on the line, with you need to make a play. You got to have a play. Your quarterback and one of your young receivers, they went out and made a play.
73% of Broncos country voted that as their top moment of the first half of the season, which is nice because it literally just comes not even a week after everything had happened there. So, hey, it's still fresh on the minds of Broncos country. I think all the different angles, like you could tell it was probably the moment of the first half of the season because you even had the Broncos social team go out and say, hey, like fans, send us your angles of this play that you were recording inside the stadium. So you're seeing all the different edits. You're seeing, the edit there from the Broncos that did like the sights and sounds of game day, which shows a really good angle right behind Bo Nix and him throwing it. And then you have the Titanic music placed over the top of that. The unfortunate thing I say about all that is that it was such short-lived because the Browns responded right afterwards with Jerry Jeudy. So it's like, they were kind of trying to play, the Grinch a little bit in that situation, but nothing could take away the 93-yard touchdown. I'm just disappointed as well that the Browns kind of took the momentum of that away because I posted a great video of Phillip Rivers back in the day where he gets hit while throwing and he throws like a 90-something yard touchdown. And then the defender's in his face and he goes, 90-yard touchdown, 90-yard touchdown. I was like, that was the perfect video to post on social media. And it didn't get as much traction because, dang, the Browns answer right back. So thank you so much, Jameis Winston. We appreciate you. But you know what? We say that now. Jameis just threw another pick six. So anyways, moving on to the topic here. Broncos country, what was your favorite moment of the season in terms of the first half so far of Denver? Make sure you respond with that. We're always eager for your thoughts as well. Send those in. And more importantly, if you're an everydayer and first listener, here's what you can expect. There is no game for the Broncos on Sunday, but we have an episode for you on Monday. Sarah and I were going to answer a couple of mailbag questions. We're going to take a look at the entire state of the AFC. We'll also hear from Broncos head coach Sean Payton Monday morning. So we'll have some stuff for you even on Tuesday going into next week's game week. Broncos Colts week. It is a must win for them. A lot to look forward to here for all you everydayers in Broncos country. Thanks for making us your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL. We'll see you on Monday for another episode, Locked On Broncos.